Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Really excited that you're here with us. We're in week 3. We're talking about pentatonic scales, which is something that most likely you encountered in your life as a guitar player. We all use them at some point or another. Some people really use them and only use them. Nothing wrong with that. You can make a career just using pentatonic scales, but some people expand a little bit in other ways and explore other venues, but we have to have pentatonic scales at some point or another. So we're in week 3. That means that if you have not seen week 1 and 2, you should leave right now. I'm joking. You should stay here because I'm trying to make these as interactive as possible, making them trying to remind you of what we've seen in the previous weeks. And you can always rewatch anything that we do here in these sessions. They are available for JamPlay members. You can rewatch them as many times as you want. And I recommend that you do that. But for now, just grab your guitar and I hope you enjoy today's session. We're going to talk about perspective today and something that we should all do when we're thinking about playing and mastering this fretboard. We need to have some kind of perspective, some kind of reference points that we're going to use so that we don't get too overwhelmed when we play. And one of them, so there's a lot of references. There's the rhythm reference. You have some kind of a tempo in the back of your mind that you follow. You need to have, maybe it's a scale, a pattern, that's your reference. But we're going to talk about visual reference points today. In the previous 2 sessions, we studied the first position, the second, and the fifth. And they all had something in common. They had that visual reference point that we're using to build our positions. We're going to talk about that a little more today. But if we're in A minor pentatonic, A is the root, that's foundation. From that foundation, that note, we're stacking other notes on top of that. And we might play these notes at the same time, that's a chord, or one after the other, that's a scale. But all the notes we play are attracted to that root, that reference. And when you hear that in a backing track, if we're playing over a backing track, that root played by the bass most of the time is going to act as that foundation that is attracting all the other notes. Without the root, then there's no context, and you don't really know what a musical idea means without that context. Because I could play something like this, for example. You don't really know what that is. That could mean something like this. If I have this as a root, but maybe if I change the root to this, same melodic idea, but it has a different context, and it's because they're attracted to different notes. So each note might give the melodic idea a different feel, different context. So that's why the root is important, and we're going to use that root as a visual reference point. That's going to be our reference, and we'll talk about that perspective thing in a second. But for sessions 1 and 2, for the last 2 weeks, we used our visual reference point on the low E string, which is the 6th string, that's the thickest string. And if we were in A, we find an A on that low E string. We have one on the 5th fret. That's our visual reference point from which we're building positions 1, which we covered in the first session. Position 5, which is just before that. And I said just before that, it's that is the reference point. That A right there. And then even position 2 was built using that as a visual reference point. I know that I'm starting that position 2 3 frets higher than my visual reference point. And so far these visual reference points, those roots, were on the low E string. And from it we could play 3 positions, 3 different zones, 3 slices of the fretboard. Positions 1, zone 1, slice 2, which is a little bit higher, and slice 5, which is just before the first one. By the way, if you have questions, write them down. I'm going to take these questions at the end of the session. And if there's something that's really important, then feel free to interrupt, and I'll take that question too. All right, so we've got those visual reference points, and now we're going to shift perspective. Change perspective to the fifth string. And that fifth string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you count from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That fifth string also has roots. Any notes on that fifth string has a different name, right? C, C sharp, D, E sharp, E, and so forth. These can all be roots. And if we can find our visual reference point on that fifth string, we're going to be able to build other positions, build other slices of the fretboard. And that's what we're after today. And we're going to take a look at position 4. So quick reminder of those numbers, position 1, position 2, 3, 4, 5. What are they? They're basically telling you which note of the scale you're starting from. And because we're talking about pentatonic scales, those are 5-note scales. Therefore, there are 5 possible notes that the scale is going to start from. 5 positions, 5 slices of the fretboard. If I take an A minor pentatonic, if I play those first 5 notes in the first position, this is how it sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I play that exact scale on the low E string, sounds exactly the same, right? Same exact notes. These notes on the low E string are the starting point of one of the 5 positions. Position 1 starts with the first note of the pentatonic scale. And it's built in a way that the lowest note you have is that first note. And then we're building them vertically instead of horizontally. There are horizontal positions that are allowing you to cover wider areas of the fretboard, going from a low all the way to the top. But we're playing vertically this time, and those are the vertical positions. So position 1 starts with the first note. Position 2 starts with the second. 3 with a third note. 4 with a fourth note. And 5 with a fifth note. And that 5, you can play it an octave lower, which is on the left side of position 1, because just before that first note, there is the fifth. There's a big circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to concentrate on that slice of the fretboard here, which is the 4th position. So it starts with the 4th note. So if I start playing my pentatonic scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, that sound, I want to find it on the low E string, and I find it on the 12th fret, and that's that bottom left colored note that you see on the 12th fret. It has a 5 in it. Don't get confused here. The 5 doesn't mean that it's the 5th position. There's a difference between intervals and position numbers. Position numbers only have to do with the actual starting note of that position. So if it starts with the first note, it's the first position. With the second note, it's the second position. Pentatonic scales are a little special because the way they're built. Traditionally, scales are 7-note scales. There are 7 notes in a scale, usually. And these 7 notes have the first note, that's the root. The second note, which is also called the second. And there's a major second and a minor second, but it's a second. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. And so it's kind of easy. The interval name, the name of the note, corresponds to the number of the position. There's 7 notes, 7 intervals, so it's easy. In pentatonic scales, minor pentatonic scales, there's no second. There's a second note, but that second note is not a second interval. It's a flat third. If we go back to our chart, our diagram here, and if we start with that first note on the low E string, 5th fret, that's our root. That's the first note. The next note we encounter is a flat third. There's no second in there. But the flat third is the second note of a minor pentatonic scale. Therefore, it's the second position of a minor pentatonic scale. Hopefully that makes sense. You can always rewatch this again. This is being recorded. By the way, I should have started by take notes as you go if you need to. It's always a good thing to have a notepad, something to write with, and your guitar as you're studying anything, whether it's this or in a magazine or a DVD. It's always a good idea. Okay, so we're studying position number 4, which starts with the 5th, because the 4th note of the minor pentatonic is root, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, 5th. And so that's why it says 5 there. Let's take a look at that position. Vertically, there are 2 notes per string. And all of these slices of the fretboard have that in common, 2 notes per string. The first 2 notes are separated by 3 frets. And you either have separations of 3 frets or 2 frets, as you can see in that. So we'll start on the 12th fret. We've got frets 12, 15, and I'm using index pinky, but it really doesn't matter which finger you use. As long as you're not feeling any pain, or as long as it's not preventing you to play the speed that you want to play at, it doesn't matter. But that's what I'm going to do here. So index pinky, 12, 15. Same exact thing on the 5th string, 12, 15, index pinky. On the next string, we have index ring. I'm going to try to stick to 1 finger per fret, just for fun. So that's frets 12, 14. Next one, same exact thing, 12, 14. Then we change it a little bit. We have 13, 15, which I'm playing with the middle pinky. And then index pinky, that's 12, 15. And if I look at the actual notes, I either have a root, a minor 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, or a minor 7th. Only 5 possible notes. These 5 possible notes were also found in the other positions we studied. Therefore, if I play a backing track, if I play a groove, a chord progression, I've got a looper here. So I'm going to create a simple loop first. Okay. Over that, if I play the 5 notes of the minor pentatonic scale, I'm in the first position. It works. If I play on the 4th position, it sounds higher pitched, but the mood is the same because I'm playing the same exact notes. Playing root, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, minor 7th. And that's all I'm playing. It just sounds higher. All that to say that it's not the position you're playing in that determines the mood or the feel or the color of your solo. It has nothing to do with that. It's not the note you're starting your position from that determines that either, because really the listener doesn't know which note you're starting to build your position from. He doesn't know because you don't necessarily play that first note first. If I'm in position 1, that slice of the fretboard, yes, that position starts with the root, but I'm not going to start all my licks with that root. I might start it with this note. So it doesn't matter which position you're in. It's always going to have the same feel as long as you're respecting the intervals that you have. So why would you use different positions? What's the use of that? The use is, the primary use, I think, is to free yourself from thinking too much in terms of positions. Because if, and a lot of players are guilty of that, if we spend a lot of time with that first position, which, quick reminder, from the low E string to the high E string, it'll be frets 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8. 5, 8. You can kind of visualize that on your chart there. Those notes are not full because that was in session 1, but that's basically what we have. If you strictly use that position to play, your fingers are going to tend to gravitate around the same comfort zones. No matter how hard you try, they're going to kind of go wherever it's easy to play. Like if you want to do a bend, for example, you're going to tend to bend with the ring finger because that ring can be helped with the middle just before and the index just before. It's more strength. So that means that on your first position, that ring always falls on the 7th fret. And how many solos have you heard that starts with that? A lot because of that. Or this. Because of that ring, that comfort zone. So if you only use that first position all the time, your licks are going to start to sound the same. And those licks are going to be directed by those comfort zones. We've heard that over and over. That kind of variation. It sounds good, but it's very repetitive. But if you change positions, if you force yourself to play outside of that comfort zones, then your ring is going to fall on different intervals. And those intervals, if bended, are going to bring out other notes of the scale. And so that's one reason. And the other reason is that eventually, when you're playing, if you break the habit of automatically thinking in terms of positions and scales and shapes, which your fingers should have under your finger, what am I looking for? What's the term I'm looking for? If you're in automatic mode and your fingers are only doing shapes, then I can't remember where I'm going with this. That's the weird thing of not having like direct conversation with you. Hopefully you're following my train of thought. So the idea is to learn a lot of positions because you're breaking that habit of playing automatically. And if you break that habit, what kind of tends to happen is that you're taking over the power of your fingers doing their own thing. You're starting to think in terms of melodic ideas like a singer would. When a singer goes in, or most singers that I've dealt with, when they come to a band rehearsal and the guitar player comes and, hey, I've got this cool chord progression, check it out. Can you find something? The singer is not going to think in terms of, okay, I've got to put my mouth this way in order to get this pitch, and then change it to this pitch and this pitch. And he doesn't think like that. He just automatically flows out ideas. Yeah, sometimes he might adjust his pitch a little bit, but he has the idea and he's just doing it. And the better the singer, the faster he is to reproduce what's inside to the outside using his muscles. It's exactly the same here with the guitar. If we break the habit of always going to that first position, then our music cannot rely on comfort zones anymore. And that's where we take over and we take that bold step of imagining an idea, and then reproducing it automatically. I got really lucky there with that pitch. But the more you do that, the faster it's going to be. You're not going to have to fish around like that. So that's why we're learning these positions. It breaks the habits of your fingers just relying on comfort zones. And it forces you to think of the music. Okay, so we learned our position. And before taking over our fingers, we're going to start just learning a little bit how to use that position and what kind of sounds we can get out of it. Just very Scalar exercises for now. And we're just going to use that fourth position for now. So quick reminder, 2 notes per string, frets 12, 15, 12, 15, 12, 14, 12, 14, 13, 15, and 12, 15. And we're going to do this in sixes. So we'll play 6 notes, so that's 3 strings. And then we'll play 6 notes again, but this time from the 5th string. And then the 4th, the 3rd. And then we'll do a descending. So we're descending 6 notes. And then descending 6 notes from the 2nd string, the 4th string, the 4th now, and etc. So we're going to try this in context. I've got my loop here. So this is that's the tempo. We'll play 2 notes per beat. So get ready, we're going to try on the next turn. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 notes. 6 notes again from the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd. Okay, now that you heard it, we're going to do it again. Two notes per beat and 6 notes, and then starting over from the next string each time. And I'm doing short notes instead of letting them ring out. Really short notes to give time to your brain to give a chance to your brain to think of the notes, the sound of the note, the pitch of the notes. We're interiorizing everything. Let's try that again. One more time. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Let's try it the reverse way. So we're starting from the top. 6 notes. 6 notes again. 6. No notes should come as a surprise. You should really anticipate the sound. Almost be able to sing it. Interiorize the sound of those. Okay. So, you see what I meant by different perspective, by the way? The different perspective is... Come on, stop. The different perspective is the note that you're visualizing to build your position. And in that case, that note is not the first note of the position. It's found on the 5th string, and that's the root. So if we go back to our diagram on the screen here, it's written in A, which means that A is that red note on the 5th string, 12th fret. So we're visualizing that A, but we're not starting from that. We're starting on the same fret, 1 string below. And that would work for any key. If we're in D, for example, well, we have a D on the 5th string, 5th fret now, and we would play the same exact shape, but starting with that 5th fret as a visual reference point. If we're in C, a C is on the 3rd fret, like that. So that's the idea. Okay, let's try one more exercise. Then I'm going to show you a few licks that we're going to use to really familiarize yourself with that. This exercise is, we're back to A. We're going to involve the 4th position, the one we just learned, with the root on the 5th string, 12th fret as a visual reference point. And then we're going to use the 1st position, which is on the low E string, 5th fret. So we're visualizing 2 things. We're visualizing the low E string 5th fret and the 5th string 12th fret. And we're going to ascend the 1st position, which you should know if you followed the 2 previous sessions. If not, you will by rewatching these. We're ascending that 1st position. And then as we're doing this, we're visualizing the next slice of the fretboard that we just learned using the 12th fret 5th string as a visual reference point. And we imagine that shape, and we're going to slide to the last note of that shape, which is on the 1st string, 12th fret, and descend that position. And then back to the 1st, slide to the 4th. And as you're getting close to ending that 1st position, my eyes are looking here right now on that slice. And as I'm getting closer to the top, my eyes shift here, focusing on that slice of the fretboard using that 12th fret as a visual reference point. So let's try this over the loop. So we're going to ascend that 1st position and slide to the next. Slide back to the 1st. Slide to the 4th. You should start to hear that without even playing it. Just try to imagine how the next sound would be like. What's the next one? That's what you should hear. Just kind of imagining the sound of those notes. And so forth. So you get the idea? You're just kind of getting those positions so that you hear the sound, and eventually we'll take over that. I'm going to share with you a few licks. I've got 4 licks today that use that 4th position. Very, very simple. The idea with licks is not to play them exactly as they are necessarily all the time, but the idea is to take one of these licks and recycle it. So if a lick is something like this, you could do a lot of things out of that. You could play this way, or this way, or... I feel that these are the same exact licks, but played differently, just like a word. You could say the word apple with a lot of different ways. Apple, 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 apple. A lot of different ways to say that. Same with licks. Okay, lick number 1. All the notes are part of that 4th position. And we're going to start by looking at just the notes, so the tab part. Then we'll add the rhythm to it. We're starting with the bend on the 2nd string, 15th fret. That's that comfortable bend with the ring finger on the 2nd string, 15th fret, because we can help that ring with the middle and index below. And we can wrap our thumb around to have more strength. This is a full bend. When it says full, the bend, the note you're bending to should sound like 2 frets higher, because that's a full step. If it was half, it'll be just 1 fret higher. But it sounds like a full step, 2 frets. And then we have 1st string, 15th fret. We're going to reach that with our pinky. And then back to that starting note, 15th fret, 2nd string. And then we're just descending the position all the way down to the 4th string, 14th fret. And we're ending on the 2nd string, 13th fret. So those are the notes. Now let's look at the rhythm. The rhythm on top here. We have 2 8th notes, so that's 2 notes per beat. If this is our beat, we'll have something like da, da for the first 2 notes. Like that. The next note, which is the 2nd string, 15th fret, lasts 2 beats. So it'll be something like, okay? If I Actually, I'm gonna record a metronome here. It'll be easier. Now let's learn those 4 last notes. Those are 16th notes, so that's 4 notes per beat. Okay, so I'm looping that first bar. And then the very last bar is made of 1/4 note on the 13th fret, 2nd string. So altogether, 2, 3, 4. That's what we have. Now, in context, I'm going to record over that a chord, a groove, an A minor, so that we have that bass of A that attracts all the other notes. I'm going to give that a try. Here's our lick. Okay, simple lick, right? Not very exciting, but we're going to make something out of that. I'm going to take that and imagine that's a word or a musical statement or a statement. How could I say this in a different way? Or with a different accent or a different speech thing. Or maybe I could say it with some kind of stutter. Where I'm repeating some notes and having trouble at some point getting the rest out. Let's try that. Something like that. It would work, right? It's still a very valid musical idea, but said a little bit differently. And that's how you can start to take control over these ideas that are not rigid in a position like that. It's starting to make more sense, to be more musical, and that's where you kind of inject your personality into these words. That's how I want you to approach this whole course, whether it's a scale, you're learning a shape, or a lick. Take it like an idea that is just written, almost said in a robotic way, and then add your own flavor to it. So first you do it the robotic way because you want to embed into your fingers the shapes. That's what we were doing here with that exercise. Nothing super exciting. Very technical, or not in the sense of it's difficult, but it's not very musical. But then you add you try to say it in a different way. That's what I want you to do. Let's take a look at lick number 2. We're still in the same exact position. We're in position 4 licks. A lot of notes, but it's all in that position. So if you know the position, you should be halfway there. We're starting on the 3rd string, fret 14, and all those notes again are in that position. So we're descending the position all the way down to the 15th fret on the 5th string, which is the 2nd note of our minor pentatonic. And then we're going back to the 12th fret, 4th string. And then the next notes, we're starting on the 4th string, 12th fret, descending again, and then back to the 12th fret. That's our lick. So we're just descending 5 notes first from the 3rd string, 14th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go back to that note you skipped. And then that note that we landed on, which is the 4th string 12th fret, we're going to start descending again the position, 4 notes this time, and we'll land on the root, which is our reference point, visual reference point. The rhythm here is made of 16th notes mostly. So if we have our metronome again, play 4 notes per beat. So that's da 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 da. The first 4 notes are 16th. Okay? That's for first 4 notes. Actually, the first 6 notes. That's what we have. So we play the first 2 beats. What happens on the next 2 beats? We have this rhythm motif. So all together, we have something like this. Okay? Let's try that in context. Here's our chord. And it can be creative, just like we were before. Instead of singing it robotic like that, we can add something to it. Maybe we're really tired when we say it, so we start a little bit late. Okay, maybe we're excited, so we might anticipate a little bit. That kind of thing. A lot of different ways, and I want you to explore some of those. How would you say this in that way? How would you say this if you were in danger? Or how would you say it if you were just waking up? All those little scenarios are going to help you discover who you are musically with those licks. So that is lick number 2. Lick number 3 is has a string skip here. We're going to take a look at that. It's just 1 bar, so it's that we're almost to the end here. We have 1 more after that, but we're still in the same position, and we're going to start ascending the first 2 notes of our pentatonic scale. So that's on the 5th string, frets 12, 15. Then we skip a string to the 3rd string and play frets 14, 12. And once we have that, we'll go to the 4th string, 14th fret, ascend 4 notes of the scale. Okay? And we'll end on the 3rd string, 14th fret. Rhythm-wise, 16th notes for the first 2 beats, and then we have a half note. So it'll be something like that. That last note lasts a long time. Something like that. For now, I attach the notes to that. With the chords. And then how else can I say that? Maybe you just woke up from a nightmare. You're kind of incoherent a little bit. Kind of freaked out about what you dreamed about. Or maybe you're in love. I don't know if that something like that. A lot of different ways to say the same word, and these are just words that you have to use as such and try to attach to it any emotional value you have. Do that with any lick you have. That's how you're going to really develop who you are and be better at your instrument. I think even more so than learning licks note per note. One more lick for you, which is a longer lick, but it's not super complex. And this time we're going to use a bend in there. And we're looking at the two last bars. We're starting on the high E string 15th fret, which is the last note of our fourth position. So you can use your ring here. You don't have to use your pinky. The ring, it's a full bend, so 2 frets higher. So we're bending that note, and then we're just descending all the way down to the 14th fret, 3rd string. And then instead of continuing our descent, which the next note should be 3rd string, 12th fret, we're not going to play that. We're going to skip that one to play the 4th string, 14th fret. And so these two notes, which are both on the 14th fret, strings 3 and then strings 4, we're not going to use a bar here. Because when you're playing a lead and you play a bar, there's always a chance that both notes are going to ring out together. You don't want that. You want distinct notes. And also, if you're using the same finger to play 2 consecutive strings in a bar, one note is always going to be a little softer than the other. Because you're not using the same part of your finger. And the optimal point when you attack when you put pressure on a string is on the tip of the finger. But in a bar, one note is going to be the tip, the other one is going to be kind of the flesh underneath. It's not as strong because there's no calluses there, and so that's another reason. So instead of doing a bar here, we're going to do a roll, what I call a roll, where we're playing our first note with the ring. That's where it falls naturally, the ring finger. Then we're rolling, we're really twisting our ankle a little bit so that the middle can reach just below, like that. So I'm shifting my ankle, my wrist. Don't play with my feet. I'm kind of moving my wrist like that. And yeah, I was thinking about I've got a circus job on the side. That's what I was thinking about. So you're kind of like shifting your wrist to reach with that middle finger. So all together, that's what we have. Okay, let's learn the rest. 2 more notes in that first bar, and then we're just ascending. On the 3rd string, we have fret 12, 14. So that's for the first bar. Next bar, I'm going to ascend. It's very similar. It's almost reversed. I'm ascending the scale starting on the 5th string, 12th fret. See that little slide there? I'm sliding into that note. I'm ascending and then skipping the 12th fret. So I'm at frets 12, 15 on the 5th string. On the next string, fret 14. On the 3rd string, frets 14, 12. It's an arpeggio, part of an arpeggio there. And then going back to the 4th string, 14th fret. 3rd string, 12th fret. 2nd string, 13. And we're adding on the 3rd string, 14th fret. All together. with the metronome. Again. With the chords. And then you make it your own. So you can even take part of the word and repeat it several times. And then start to make your own words by maybe combining some, like the first one. Don't feel like you have to play it exactly again. I'll play a little bit with the second one. Go back to the first one. I'll play with the third one. The fourth one. And so forth. So that's kind of improv. That's what you should be doing when you're learning something. Learn the idea like it's written and then expand on that. Quick reminder of what we covered today. We learned one new position, which is the fourth position. That fourth position starts with the fourth note of a minor pentatonic. So if we play our minor pentatonic 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, that note, which is also found on the low E string 12th fret, is the starting point of our fourth position. We also talked about visual reference points, which is the note from which you're kind of building or imagining how your shapes will look like. Visual reference point on the low E string, 5th fret for an A, will be the one that we use to build slice 1, position 5, which is just below, and position 2, which is on the right side of position 1. And today, we used the visual reference point on the 5th string, 12th fret, and that's how we built position number 4. A couple steps when we're working through these and when you're going to work through these this week. The first step is to embed all those positions and shapes into your fingers so I don't really have to think about it. The second step is to reclaim control over the automatic playing that your fingers are doing by listening to what you want to play and then reproduce that by following some of the shapes that you have. Try to figure out where they fall into the shape. And a good way to practice that is to learn a phrase, a musical phrase or a lick, and then reproduce it. Don't clone it, but use that as a starting point to create new ideas like that. So those are the steps I want you to take. With today's session, and same with all the other sessions actually, there is a practice guide that you'll find in the supplemental content of this lesson when you rewatch it. And that practice guide is meant to be a real-time video, about 30 minutes, in which you grab your guitar and you just practice for 30 minutes. But it's not an empty video. You're still getting something out of it. Or I'll kind of coach you, tell you what to do exactly. So I would like you to run this guide, practice guide, maybe a couple of times this week. Do that for any of the lessons you're studying, really. If there's a practice guide, a couple times a week is good. Quality time with your instrument. It's better to have 30 minutes one day that is really dedicated in a quiet place where you have nothing to worry about but practice, then it's better to do that than an hour every day with your guitar just in front of the TV. The TV stuff is good. When you're watching and you're playing, that kind of solidify what you already know, and it's going to add more comfort, but you're not really going to learn something new. So I'm talking about learning something new and really dedicated time on your instrument. I'm going to take questions if we have any today.
Yeah, we've got a handful here.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm going to hit this one first. This one's been Mr. Metalhead suggested this one. Can you explain the relationship between this fourth position and the Phrygian mode?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's maybe a little bit of confusion here with some of the modes, so let me just explain really quick what modes are. They can be two different things. Modes can be seen as positions. Earlier I talked about 7-note scales, and each of these notes can be the starting point of a new position. Position 1 starts with the first note of that scale, position 2 with the second, 3 with the third, and so forth. And if we're considering a major scale, it has 7 notes. 7-note major scale has 7 positions. Position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can also call these positions Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. So that's the first use of these modes. You can use those terms, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, as names for these positions. And a lot of players just stop there, and that's not what I want you to do. The other use is to see those modes as unique and individual scales. They're completely unique, and they have their own sets of systems. It's true that you can use the relationship between these modes as positions 1, 2, 3, 4 as shortcuts. If you learn position 1, and you want to play the Dorian, where you see where that position 1 Ionian falls into the Dorian, it's one note below, and you make the math. By the way, if you're completely confused, you can skip this. This is not the topic, but if you know about modes, that's for you. If not, don't worry about it. So the question here is, what is the relationship between that fourth position and the Phrygian mode? Well, if we consider A minor pentatonic as the root, position 1, position 2, 3, which we will cover next week, 4, and if we consider that minor pentatonic is the basis, that minor pentatonic can be found in 3 things. It can be found in 3 different modes. Again, if you're lost, don't worry about it. It can be found in Dorian, Phrygian, or Aeolian. If we consider that it's an Aeolian, which is the natural minor scale, it's the minor scale that people start learning usually, we'll find that Aeolian mode, within that Aeolian mode, we find a hidden minor pentatonic scale. And if we continue playing that Aeolian mode throughout, all all the way up until we reach that zone of the fretboard where the fourth position is, we'll find that Aeolian mode, Aeolian, starting from the low note of that position, corresponds to the Phrygian mode. That's the relationship. If you didn't follow, there's a full course on applied music theory that I produced for JamPlay a while back, years ago, but that's still relevant, and it will explain all that stuff. It's not complicated, but it takes time, step-by-step program, which was recorded for JamPlay a few years back. So refer to that if you're interested in the topic. But that's the relationship.
Okay. Here's one from Wayne Garn.
Mm-hmm.
We did position 1, 2, and 5.
Okay.
Now 4. Where is position 3? Why are we going out of order?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Position 3 will be next week. So why are we going out of order? We're going out of order because I want, instead of thinking in terms of placement like that, vertically, like position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I want to focus on visual reference points. And position 1 has the visual reference point on the low E string, like we saw. And that's why most players use that position and gravitate around it, because the first note you play is actually the first note of the position. That root is the first note of the position, first note you see. And so we spent time in the last 2 sessions to work on positions 1 and 5 first, which use that low E string as a visual reference point, 1 and 5. And then I added position 2, which is on the right side, because I wanted to show how we can expand a little bit on that pentatonic scale and go a little bit higher. But that position 2, even though it's a little bit outside of that 5th fret, it's a little bit further away, we still use that low E string as the visual reference point to play number 2. If I asked you to play position number 2 of a G minor pentatonic, most likely you're going to look at your low E string to find that G, 3rd string, and you're going to kind of visualize how that position works. So it's about visual reference points. Today, we're dealing with position number 4, because now we're using the 5th string as a visual reference point. And from that 5th string, we can either play on the right side of that 5th string or the left side. Generally speaking, we're so used to building our positions on the right side. So that's why we did position 4. That's what that position corresponds to. Next week, we'll look at what happens on the left side of that visual reference point. That's position 3. And then after that, we'll talk about how to tie everything together. But instead of thinking in terms of numbers for these positions, I would advise you to think in terms of visual reference points, because that's going to be faster. You're just going to think of, okay, I'm in B. I've got a B here on the 7th fret. I can play on the right side of that, or on the left side. Left side corresponds to position 5, but who cares? Just think in terms of right or left. I'm going to try to tie everything together next week, but there's a reason why we're doing it in disorder, and it's because of those reference points.
Okay. Here's another one. I noticed that you hold your guitar neck horizontal to the floor. Others recommend holding it at a higher angle. Any pros and cons?
Actually, yes. I'm playing it horizontal so that you can see, because there's too many cameras on me. That's all. But if I was natural, I'd probably do something like this or that. There's no rules. Whatever's comfortable. But that's a good observation, though. And I can see myself on the screen, and I have this OCD thing where, like this mental game where the neck has to be exactly parallel to the bottom of the screen here. That's why. And yep, right. It is now.
All right, here's another one from RL Chisholm. How do I keep my callus from catching on the next higher string when bending?
That's also a good question. It sounds like maybe your calluses are not as smooth as they should be. So you could use a what's I've got the French word lime, but I don't know. A file, yeah. You can use a file to smoothen that, just gently. That might help. Other than that, if you're talking about maybe not the skin coming out, but if you're actually talking about you're playing a note like the second string that I'm bending, and as I'm bending it, the third is being caught, and you don't want that. Well, that's actually okay that it's being caught. That's always caught. But what you don't want is that third string that's bended to be heard like that. If that's the problem, then you've got to use the palm of your right hand to kind of it's always placed here, kind of muting everything. And also the top of your fingertip here, that's muting that third string so it doesn't ring out. But try to use a file, that might help, and always muting everything that does not need to be played.
Okay, here's one from Al Elms. How do you prevent the screeching when sliding up and down the strings?
Another good question here. I really don't. I don't think about it. In this case, I've got a clean sound, so it's easier not to hear that too much. Actually, I do actually control that. I do it with the palm here. If I don't want it to be heard, my palm is kind of like muting everything, just touching everything, so that if I'm moving, you don't hear it as much. You'd hear it more with distortion, but yeah, the palm has a lot to do with it. Yeah, learning how to mute all unnecessary sounds. Always have as much contact as you can with the strings. And sometimes when you're going from this area to the top, it's even best not to touch the strings as you're going up. Just getting used to that movement. But being aware of it is half of the job, and you already are aware of it. So that's going to force you to think a little bit differently and play differently.
Okay, from this one just came in a little bit ago from our Mary 7710. Could you explain the rake technique?
Yeah, the rake is a sound that that happens when you're strumming. Actually, let's say you're strumming an E minor chord. Your right hand is basically raking. Now, if instead of having a chord or something like that here, I just place all my hand right here. I'm not putting any pressure, because if I do, the notes are going to be heard, but just touching slightly, that's already the rake sound. That rake sound usually is played just before a piece, like a solo, for example. And for that, my left hand is is not, you're good, is raking. So it's resting on the strings and getting ready for the next note. So I'm resting and I'm aiming at, let's say, the second string, 7th fret, okay? I'm going to do a rake just before. These fingers, anything behind the index is just resting on the strings. And then I'll release, I'll lift my hand, so I hear that last note sound. You can also do the rake with the palm of your right hand, which can touch the strings as you are. And that's probably actually the most, it's a combination of both. But the palm is resting here. I'm doing that rake motion, just like when you're strumming a chord. So it's a combination of the right hand, palm, and the left hand, flat on your fretboard. And that's the rake. You can do it backwards. So it's just a sound kind of thing, approaching a note with just raking like that. Just like you're raking leaves, you're raking the strings. So that's the rake.
Okay, I just had one more come in.
Okay.
So I didn't get it into my form yet, but I'll just ask you, What is the very best way to increase speed? Scales or riffs?
Um, I don't think it's the right question because it depends on what you want to play. If you want to play fast riffs, then riffs. If you want to play fast solos, solos. And if you're working only on scales and licks and sequences, then that's not necessarily going to help your riffs. It's very different because riffs involve maybe more muting, and even the attack is a little different with riffs. You attack a little bit stronger than with single note lines. So I would do both, and I would heavily focus on what you feel like you need in your playing, and it's going to depend on the style of music you're listening to, the guitar players that you look after, that you want to kind of imitate. It's going to depend on all that. So I don't know if I can really help. Plus, I'm not a very fast player. Yeah, I hope that helps. Next week, position 3, which is the final position of our memorization of the fretboard. There's a backing track in today's session, a funky thing. It's in the key of A. I want you to practice those licks over that track. Watch the practice guide for this session during the week. If you have questions, write them down. I'll take them next week. And practice well. I'll be back next Monday, same time, same place. And I'm looking forward to seeing you here. Thank you so much.